Do you want an amazing marriage? Are you ready to take your marriage to the next level? Then stick around for Your Marriage Matters podcast with marriage coach Lynn. Let's put some fun and sizzle into your relationship.
Have you ever encountered someone who tells you that they've been divorced, getting divorced, and they're blindsided? They had no clue. Their husband left them after 20 years, 20, 25, 30 years. We had a pretty good marriage. Everybody was surprised. And now we're separated and we're getting divorced. A lot of people will describe that. And we accept that, and we feel sorry that things didn't work out, and we accept it as fact. Well, here on Your Marriage Matters podcast, I have to tell you, we're not politically correct. We have to be honest here. We can only be honest and face our pain if we want to make improvements. When a couple gets divorced, we think it's a complete surprise. We have to probe beneath the surface. And only the couple knows what was going on. And I'm about 90% certain that a divorce just doesn't come out of the blue blindsided with zero indications that things were not 100% happy and going smoothly. There are things that can happen where one member of the couple, the husband or the wife, makes bad choices. They make immoral choices. They go down a slippery slope of forming a friendship in the workplace that becomes a little too close. Baby steps are taken. An emotional affair might begin. It might turn into a sexual affair. And surprise, surprise, now we have chaos and disruption and devastation to the marital relationship. But let's probe deeper. And in today's episode, we are going to be talking about the positive perspective. We are working on the Sound Relationship House, and we are now on the 4th level. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that we can't blame the partners. It's those little things that weren't nurtured, that were not noticed, that were not taken care of along the way. And today I'm going to introduce a couple of new phrases: the positive sentiment override, the negative sentiment override, and repairs. So let's get right into the positive perspective. I want to give you 2 examples here of 2 different people. Jim, he's been married 7 years. When he's away from his wife and he thinks of her, he usually thinks about all the things she's not doing right, how she doesn't help around the house, how their recent fights are magnified in his mind, all of her shortcomings, all of her imperfections. He's exhausted, she's exhausted, and he's annoyed. She's working, they have 2 young kids, and it seems that all he can think about are her shortcomings and what she's not doing. And frankly, he prefers being in the workplace than at home sometimes. Life is easier in the workplace. People are happier. When he comes home, it just seems like it's a negative life experience and a negative marriage. He has a negative sentiment override. His perspective of his wife and his marriage right now is on the negative side. So that's the lens that he is viewing the relationship through. On the other hand, let's give an example of Sarah. Let's say she's been married 12 years. When she's away from her husband, she thinks of him so fondly. She's so happy with him. She thinks about their past vacations. She can't wait for future vacations. Even if things have been neutral or negative, her mind is set on the positive. Now, is this Pollyanna-like? Is she distorting? No, she is focusing. Her attitude is on gratitude. She's focusing on the positive, and she's so excited to see him that 10 hours away from him seems to be too much. So in both of these scenarios, there are crucial differences between Jim and Sarah. Sarah is looking positively at how she views her partner, and Jim is negative. So what will happen is this affects their relationship, how they relate to each other, how they disagree or get into arguments or conflict Of course, Sarah will probably bounce back more quickly and come to a resolution with disagreements with her husband, as opposed to Jim, who might spiral downward. So we have a negative sentiment override and a positive sentiment override. Those who are caught in the negative view seem to distort the view of their partner. So even if their partner does something positive or neutral, it can be viewed as negative. Let's say Jim's wife is a complainer. For the last 5 years, he has decided she complains about everything. So guess what happens when she's doing inner work and trying to not complain so much? He's going to assume, most likely, that it is not valid, that her move to making a change is not valid. So see, if you have this negative view of your spouse, sometimes it is so clouded to being in the moment and listening in the here and now and giving your partner a benefit of the doubt. You really get stuck and trapped when you get stuck in this negative sentiment override. It's very destructive. It can create more conflict. You are more likely to be accusatory. You're more likely to misunderstand. You're more likely to become defensive and not empathize with your partner. So be on guard having a negative view of your spouse. So what about the positive view? Well, of course, we know positive would be more healthy. The people who are positive tend to give their partner a chance, a second chance, a third chance, and when a conflict arises, they are more likely to be able to repair. The repair attempts, which are the actions that reduce any escalation of conflict, and you generally see your partner in a more positive light. This, my friends, makes for a happier marriage if you can get into the positive frame of mind. A lot of people will be stuck in their marriage. Oh, it's just not working out. Oh, and you can see that they're not making a move towards a positive view of their partner. I want to give a couple more examples and talk about what is important between this negative and positive viewpoint. And the overriding umbrella of it all is forming a friendship, forming a couple friendship, the positive perspective. And when we have a friendship, we have mutual respect, mutual trust, mutual honor of each other. And I want to really talk about this concept of power sharing. There are some Christian couples who distort this notion of the man as the head of the household. This doesn't mean that the man is the dominant bulldozer. He makes all final decisions. What I want to encourage couples is that there is an equality, equal power sharing, where you accept each other's influence and input into matters that go on, especially decision making. Decision making in the large issues, decision-making in the small issues, and decision-making as far as parenting. So let's take an example. Let's say you have a 16-year-old. That in and of itself could be challenging. A parent of a 16-year-old comes with their identities changing, they're starting to spread their wings, gain more independence, and it's the bridge from childhood to young adulthood. So let's say the wife thinks the 16-year-old should have a curfew and be home at midnight. There's no reason that a 16-year-old should be out past midnight. And let's say the husband is more lenient and, hey, our 16-year-old is behaving well, is making great grades, we can trust her, so we don't need a curfew. I trust that she will make good decisions. I don't want to be an authoritarian parent, so she can stay out all night. She can make those decisions. Well, number one, the husband and wife should talk about this outside the hearing of the 16-year-old. So behind closed doors, the two of you should talk about this rather than blow up into an argument when your 16-year-old says, hey, I'm going to a party tonight at such and such friend's house. Of course, no alcohol. We're just going to watch movies, and I probably will be home at 2 or 3. It's going to be good. And so the wife disagrees with that, but the husband is like, okay, sounds reasonable to me. So the two of you want to find a reasonable conclusion to this disagreement. So in your conversation, you listen to each other, respect each other, and really hear each other's viewpoint. And so the solution that you've decided to arrive upon is that yes, the curfew will be 12, but it's okay if she comes home at 12:30 as long as she texts or calls, or we know whose house she is at and what she's doing. It's not micromanaging. It's raising your 16-year-old with reason and sense. So the husband at first might be like, well, and the wife is like, okay, 12:30. But after you've talked this out, you've found that it was reasonable. So what do we have here in this example? We have power sharing going on, decision making, mutual trust of each other, and we're coming to a positive perspective of a situation. And the couple can come to a positive conclusion if they have positive sentiment override, if they have a positive view of each other. So that's a mature way to handle it. A less mature way is parents huffing and puffing, the 16-year-old slamming the door, walking out, the 16-year-old getting her own way, both parents being upset. Even if the 16-year-old should come home at 11:30 at night, you still have conflict. So we want to avoid the conflict and the negativity that can creep in, especially in parenting. And we know that the child will go for the parent that is the more lenient in certain issues. So it's important to be united. Very hard for parents to be united if one of them has a negative view of the other. Again, very important for couple friendship. And we form couple friendship by working the first 3 levels of the Sound Relationship House, which form the foundation. Now with this one, the positive perspective, we're moving into more digging into the crux of the matter of a relationship. So be working on the foundation, be working on having a positive view. Because when you have a positive view of each other and a perspective, your partner is your friend. It is not your competitor, not your adversary. You are on the same team if you are forming a good friendship. Let's say, here's an example of what happens if you have a negative sentiment override. If your view of your partner is negative, you have this past history that has formed. And let's say that the mom is a working mom, full-time hours. Her husband has full-time hours outside the home also. And basically the mom feels like she's taking on the burden of everything, the household chores, the children. So here's an argument that can erupt on a Saturday morning at 6 a.m. when her 3-year-old gets up and is ready to get started, ready for breakfast, ready to play, and the mom wants to sleep in. She commutes, she's tired. Come on, can I at least sleep in until 8 a.m. on a Saturday? So she can yell at the husband, you never get up with the kids on a Saturday or Sunday. It's always me, you never do this. Now, even if this is true, this is a negative startup to an argument that we want to avoid. There are better ways that you can request your spouse to help out with the children in your exhaustion and to try to create a little more equality, a little more time that you can get rest. So I want to recommend also to get a copy of my book, Re-Energize Your Marriage in 21 Days. This book is well designed as far as increasing your friendship and your connection within your marriage. And I think some of these exercises will help you wipe away some of the negativity, some of those absolutes that you erupt into when you get angry or when you get very stressed or frustrated that things are becoming difficult or overwhelming for you. What I want to repeat is you want to give your partner the benefit of the doubt. The example I gave for the woman who was complaining for 5 years and is starting to do some changing because she feels she wants a better relationship. Give her the benefit of the doubt. When your partner is changing for the better, don't accuse or get used to a certain habits and patterns. This is a very interesting thing in marriage. We get used to habits and patterns, and we don't believe that our partner is going to change on his or her own. It almost confuses us. We almost get into this routine of comfort, even if it's an unhealthy or a place where we feel stuck. So let's applaud when our spouse is making efforts to change. How can we create a more positive perspective in our marriage? We can show appreciation. Appreciate your partner, show gratitude. But the main thing you could do right now to improve a positive perspective is to respond to the emotional cues in the moment. What is going on in the present moment? Stop assuming. Don't react based on the past history, although I know sometimes it's counterintuitive, but pay attention to what's going on in the moment, what your spouse is bringing to you at that moment. Be certain to try to talk face to face, make eye contact, use a little more smiling, use a little more validation. For today's exercise, I would like you to tell your partner 3 things that you like about him or her. Again, when you have full attention, when you're not distracted, when you can sit down and talk face to face, eye to eye, and that you can listen to your partner and just really be in the present moment, because when we form friendship, it's all about quality time and quantity time. Please enjoy being positive with your partner, even in the midst of difficulties or challenges. I guarantee that if you follow the Sound Relationship House, you are well on your way to building a happy marriage. Until next time, make your marriage great.